All right. We're starting the usual Facebook Live discussing handling the critical 5 Ps of export business, handling the critical 5 Ps of export business challenges. We started the product. We've discussed pricing, and this afternoon we'll be talking about paperwork. Purchasers. Remember, we have 5 of them: the product, the pricing, the purchasers, the paperwork, and payment. Razak Adibayo, thank you very much for joining. Let's share with our friends and colleagues who will be interested in learning what we'll be discussing. We have been advocating the need for us to begin to look at export. However, many people don't seem to understand why we need to export, how vital and important it is for us to export, and how to go about it. Sunday Ogunpiton, thank you very much for joining. Ronke Odejobi, thank you very much for joining. Let's share with our friends and colleagues who might be interested in what we'll be discussing today. I'm sure you've seen the topic: handling the challenges of export business. We've looked at pricing challenges. We looked at product challenges yesterday. Today we'll be looking at the purchasers challenges. And then in the evening of today, we'll be looking at the paperwork. And maybe tomorrow morning, we'll round off with the payment. One of the major challenges of exporters in most parts of the world is getting buyers for their product. Fumilola Oshinfowora, thank you very much for joining. The fact that export business involves trade across borders makes it very difficult to get across to various intending buyers around the world, due to distance, language barrier, cultural differences, and many other factors. Getting purchasers and signing export contract, therefore, which is also called agreement, marks the commencement of an international trade transaction. Invariably, an export contract is then defined as a document that needs to be signed by both buyers and sellers before a legally binding international trade can take place between them. The agreement signed by a buyer and seller before a legally binding international trade can take place between them is called the sales contract, it's called the purchase order, it's called the export contract. Different name that is being called. The question that anyone looking to get purchasers or buyer and sign an export contract with them need to answer include the following. Remember, for those that have been joining us, in handling the challenges, we've been asking questions. And when you ask the right question, then of course you're able to make progress because you get the right answer. And we look at the what of the question, the where, the when, the who, the why, the which, and the how. We've done that for product, we've done that for pricing, and we are doing it for purchasers, the buyer. What are the content of a typical export contract? Where can one get buyers? When should an exporter go ahead to sign the export contract? Who are the people that can link an exporter to buyers? Why does exporter need to sign an export contract? Which contract terms are most preferred? How can one secure an export contract from buyers from abroad? Majek Okwonla, thank you very much for joining. How can one secure an export contract from buyer abroad? Now, many people believe strongly that one of the major challenges of export transaction is getting buyers. And I often say that that's not true, because when the product is good, the buyer will appear. And I often use the example of one of the products we ship to Europe, which is Nigerian pap. And the fact that people see this product in stores and call the manufacturer, the number of which is on the body, and they'll tell him, look, I found this product in store, I'm in Nigeria, and I noticed this product from Nigeria. I would like you to be shipping this to me for me to sell. The lady producing the product is not marketing the product. He just simply sells to those who want to export, and people in the export market are calling her. What that tells you is that, number one, the product is in demand, the product is good, the product is well packaged, and people are interested in buying the product. The product I'm talking to you about is this one. This is Ogi. This is produced in Nigeria and is exported out of this country. We do this export of this almost every month or every other month. So the first question says, what are the content of a typical contract? The content of a typical contract include the following. Number one, the name, the buyer and seller's name. The buyer and seller's name. Number two, the buyer and seller's contact details. The buyer and seller's contact details. If you are signing an agreement with a partner abroad, these are the things that should be part of it. Henry Bechina, thank you very much for joining. The buyer and seller's contact details. The buyer and seller's account details. Description of the goods. Quality specification. Quantity. Packaging. Latest date of shipment. Pricing. Incoterms. Origin. Port of loading. Port of discharge. Payment terms. Payment method. Shipping document. Dispute resolution. Inspection. Insurance. Force majeure. Termination. Special conditions. Governing laws and jurisdiction. And lastly, the signature of the buyer and the seller. Lastly, the signature of the buyer and the seller. All I've read to you are all detailed content of a typical sales contract. So if I'm exporting product out and I want to know what are the things that should be part of the content, sales contract, that's what I've just read to you. So what you can do is at your convenience to go through the video. Remember to share the video so you can have it on your timeline. So you can easily go there and check and go through it so that if you have questions on any of the item I've mentioned, you can actually chat me here now or chat me on the Facebook Messenger and then I can answer you. Because of time, I will have to continue right now. But what I've just read out is answering the first question. What are the content of a typical sales contract? The second question says, where can one get buyers? This is a very important question because a typical exporter wants to know how much options are available to him in getting buyers. And these options include online trade platform like Alibaba.com, TradeKey.com, TradeBoss.com, GlobalBuyersOnline.com. I've talked about this in the past. GlobalBuyersOnline.com. GlobalBuyersOnline.com. Number two is going for trade mission. How do you meet buyers? Go for trade mission. Go for solo exhibition. In March 27 to 31, there will be Made in Nigeria solo exhibition in Cote d'Ivoire. Made in Nigerian solo exhibition in Cote d'Ivoire. If you have a product already that you're trying to promote for export, then you want to join us at that program. Going for trade missions in countries abroad, advertising on the media in that country or on social media platform. Visiting the Nigerian Promotion Council in order to be able to get detail of interested buyers who have contacted them. Otto Gabriel, thank you very much for joining. Visiting bilateral chamber of commerce, like the Nigeria British Chamber of Commerce. Then you can also visit Nigerian German Business Council, Nigerian Netherlands Chamber of Commerce. So here I've given you three options. I've given you option one, go online portals in getting buyers for export. Number two, go and do advert online on social media platforms. Number three, I say you should visit Nigerian Promotion Council. They often have buyers who have indicated interest and expecting them to refer registered Nigerian exporter. And I mentioned also bilateral chamber of commerce. Other informal one I didn't mention include dealing with dealing with other exporters, getting contact from other exporters who recommend you to the buyer, or working with friends and relatives abroad who can also help you get buyers. The next question is, when should an exporter go ahead to sign a contract? This is extremely important because an exporter should not rush to sign any contract until he has been able to answer the following question. Where do you want to get the item to be exported? Does the source of the product have enough quantity to fill the order and meet the volume being demanded within the period expected? Can you transport the goods to the port and still be able to ship within that period? How much do you need to raise in order to be able to export this project? Do you have all the funds for the project, or you have to source for it? Do you need to source for equity or debt to fund the deficit? Can you get the funds for the project and still be able to ship within the stipulated period after sourcing for the funds? As soon as you sign the contract, the time starts ticking. So it is wise for you to ensure you answer the questions about the source of the goods, about the funding, and about logistics before you go ahead and sign the contract. Someone is asking a question. Fumilola Shifowora says, how can one join the Cote d'Ivoire exhibition in March? What are the requirements? As I'm interested. Fumilola Shifowora, please drop a message for me on Facebook Messenger after this Facebook Live, and I will send the flyer to you. I will drop the flyer to you. I will also drop the flyer on my timeline for you to be able to see it. So I'll drop the flyer for the Cote d'Ivoire exhibition on my timeline. Fumilola Shifowora, you have a product that I think we should try out at this program. That's the spices you've sent to me in the past. I think you should try it out. The detail of registration, I will let you know. It's 100,000 to register. The Nigerian Promotion Council already subsidized it. It was about 250,000 before. But Nigerian Promotion Council already gave a good sum of money and subsidizing that so that Nigerians who want to go for this program will not have to pay so much. So the only thing you have to worry about will be your transport to Cote d'Ivoire. And I will drop the detail also. If you are going by air, there is a negotiated amount already. If you are going by road, there's a negotiated amount already. And I also drop information on the room rate for the hotel. And of course, average amount you will be spending for feeding within that period. It's just about a 4-day program. And it will be great for you to be there since you already have a product. And for those that do not have a product, what we've been promoting on this show is for you to be able to partner with individuals who have products, then you be their distributor in the country we are talking about. So, and that's what we discussed extensively when we discussed transiting from paid employment to self-employment in export business. So if you are listening to us and you're joining us for the first time, if you go on my timeline, you will see some of the previous video we did last week on transiting from paid employment to self-employment in the export business. Transiting from paid employment to self-employment in export business. So I've talked about when you are ready, what should make you ready, the source of the goods, the funding, the logistics, all the questions around that as highlighted should be expressly answered before you go ahead and append your signature. Don't be like people who will sign an agreement and then begin to look for people to fund. And at the end of the day, by the time they are getting the fund, the time has elapsed and they are not able to ship again, and the buyer see them as being unserious, and the buyer see Nigeria as being unserious. Because when you are exporting or you are importing, people deal with you as a nation, they don't deal with you as an individual. So when you misbehave, when you do something unwholesome, when you do not, when your word is not your bound, the Nigerian environment is interpreted that way. And when you do great stuff, they also see you as one of those good Nigerians and a model to show that Nigeria is actually changing for what he or she used to know about the country. So it's about Nigeria. It's not just about you when you perform excellently or when you mess up the transaction as an exporter. The first question is, who are the people that can link exporters to buyers? Some of the people that are an exporter should look out for in their search for link to buy abroad include: number one, trade brokers. Trade brokers. Trade brokers are individuals who are middlemen, who connect buyer to seller, and of course make some income along the line. Trade brokers, then friends and relative abroad. Friends and relative abroad. Friends and relative abroad is another great way to connect with buyers, and then existing exporters. Existing exporter is another interesting way from which you can consult and connect with exporters. Trade brokers are professionals who specialize in connecting buyers to sellers around the world at a fee. Trade brokers is an individual who specializes in connecting buyers around the world at a fee. A number of brokers are commissioned by buyers to help them search for products to buy. They are also engaged by the seller to help them market their product and search for credible buyers around the world. So a number of these brokers are found in places like London, covering Europe, Some are found in New York, covering North and South America. Some are found in Dubai, covering Africa and Middle East. And a number of them are found in Shanghai, covering the Asia. Another very credible channel of getting buyer is working with friends and relatives abroad. Working with friends and relatives abroad. Some of your friends and relatives abroad are valuable assets that you can leverage with in order to be able to get buyers. And when you are working with a friend and relative, put them on commission. Ensure that they're not doing it for free because they are your friends or relatives. Ensure that they have a stake. There's something coming to them on the transaction. This is a less costly and reliable channel because it involves a known person. The detail of how this works will be discussed. Of how this works is going to be discussed in some of the subsequent editions of this online program, Facebook Live program. The detail, the last one with least probability, that's talking about question 4 in getting buyers, is reference from current exporters. That's not very common, but it happens. It happens. You can get reference from current exporters. Except for exporters who have a large heart and willing to see other people grow and knowing fully well that market is large enough for everyone. Most exporters do not like to reveal their buyers to intending exporters. They want you to go through them instead of doing it yourself. Question 5. And the question is, why does an exporter need to sign a contract? Why can't he just go ahead with the pro forma invoice like a lot of importers do? A lot of importers in Nigeria just collect pro forma invoice without any signature. On the side of pro forma invoice, they wire money abroad and then the good is shipped to them. And they are used to this, and some of them think it's okay. It's very important for them to know that this is wrong in international trade, and the only way to seek a redress and get judgment in your favor is if the other party have erred through a contract that both of you have signed. If there is no binding agreement, buyer and seller, so if there's no binding agreement showing the responsibility of the buyer and seller, then it will be difficult to hold any erring party to account. If you don't have an agreement signed, you are basically saying if anything goes wrong, there's no way you can define if the person have not done right. Why? Because there's no agreement signed. There should be an agreement signed by both of you. The second to the last question is, which contract term is most preferred? This means the terms of delivery, and it's also called the Incoterms. These are international commercial terms that define the where, the risk, the where, that define where the risk and cost of the exporter ends, that define where that of importer starts. It is wiser for importer to choose the term that is first reasonable and also allow the exporter to incur minimal cost with its risk ending on or before the port of loading. Reasonable in the sense that it does not require importer to come and pick up goods at the warehouse, in the case of exports, or shipping goods, or a shipping line free carrier, when a lot of competitors are willing to deliver the goods to the port. Likely in Nigeria, many are using free on board and CFR. Let me explain what we're trying to talk about here. We're talking about the fact that your contract terms should be clearly stated. And the contract term is stated in form of Incoterms. Incoterms. Incoterm means international commercial terms, and it separates transaction risk and cost between buyers and sellers. Incoterms separate transaction risk and cost between buyers and sellers. Incoterm separate transaction risk and cost between buyers and sellers. What that means is that when both of you sign agreement, the agreement is also saying, where does my risk ends? Where does yours start? Where does my risk ends? Where does yours start? Where does my risk ends? Where does yours start? Where does my risk ends? Where does yours start? If I'm shipping my group from Nigeria and the vessel capsized before it gets to South Africa, who has lost money? Incoterms states who has lost money. During the tsunami, the goods were being shipped from China coming to Nigeria, and offshore Japan, there was a heavy tsunami and it caused vessel to capsize. Who has lost money? Is it the Chinese man who has shipped the goods or the Nigerian importer who has imported? If I'm exporting, is it the exporter in Nigeria who has shipped the goods or the buyers in Europe or Asia and America who is expecting the goods? Incoterms defines that. There are 11 of them, and you need to know where do you want your risk to end. Typically in Nigeria, many people want their risk to end as soon as they deliver the good on board the vessel. They don't want to bear the cost of shipping to destination. As soon as they deliver the good on board the vessel, their risk and cost ends, and that of the importer starts. So I would recommend you do what is called the FOB, that's the free on board. The last one under this series before we round off this afternoon is how can one secure an export contract from buyer from abroad? How can one secure an export buyer from abroad? Having been able to get a link to buyer, how then can you eventually secure the contract? It's not enough to get contract, to get the buyer details, to be able to get introduced and get to meet the buyer. How do you secure the contract? You need to demonstrate to this buyer your credibility. That's your consistency of results in the export business and other businesses you must have done. Your cohort or companion, that's the experience of the team you are working with. The competence, that's the competence to be able to deliver the right quality and quantity on time and in time. The character that you are by and signed by what you have signed in the agreement. You will not stop shipment because the price have moved against you, and now you are going to incur some slight losses, but you are going ahead to ship despite the loss because your word is your bond, having signed the agreement. And lastly, the cash. The cash to do the business is available or will be made available as at when needed. These are the traits that you must find a way to communicate to the buyer, to give the buyer the comfort, credibility, companion, character, competence, and cash. I call them the 5 levels of money, the 5 manifestation or expression of money. Credibility, companion, character, competence, and cash. You must demonstrate this to the buyer for the buyer to be able to know you have what it takes to be able to ship this item. Finally, I would like to state that if the challenges of getting purchaser are going to be surmounted by exporter, then the 7 questions posed in this edition of the Import-Export platform on Facebook Live have to be adequately answered. Remember what we are trying to do. What we are trying to do is to isolate the challenges in export business. We have isolated the challenges of product. It was dealt with yesterday morning. We have isolated the challenges of pricing. It was dealt with yesterday evening. We have isolated also the challenges of purchasers. That's what we're just rounding off now. And the one for paperwork will be done later in the day, in the evening today. And the one for payment will be done tomorrow morning when the work starts around 8 a.m. I want to thank you very much for connecting with us again today. My name remains Dele Ayimibo. Thank you very much for listening, and see you in the evening. We will be on live in the evening around 7 p.m. We'll be on live in the evening around 7 p.m. Bye for now, and have a great weekend.